This is The Extra Mile.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Extra Mile. I'm Caleb Spear along with
G5.
the G5. We're back in the studio today. We've got another guest with us. It's our good friend, Eric Finley. How you doing?
I'm doing good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's nice to have you.
It's great to have you.
We're going to have a good conversation, and we're going to talk with Eric, and we're going to look at basically the topic of service, but we really want to touch in on Eric's testimony. And this continues what we usually do. You probably saw last week's episode, or be 2 weeks episode now, right?
Yeah, we'll be 2 weeks.
With Jacob Harlow, and we're just interviewing everyday Christians battling everyday problems.
Yes, that's so true. And a little introduction here. Eric is the man. Another thank you from us and the folks at Milwaukee for letting us camp out here at the Lubbock Children's Home.
Oh man,
right now.
we love having you out here, and we know the work y'all are doing and the benefit it helps the kids. So thank y'all very much.
That's very kind of you guys. We love being involved here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really nice.
So let's talk about Eric. That's what we're going to talk about.
That's right.
It'll be a short conversation.
Oh, okay. All
That's
right,
what we're going
good.
to talk about.
Brief episode.
Just we want to know your testimony. What's your story? How'd you come to Christ? What led you to Him and
We'll go from
salvation?
there.
Yeah, no one's asked me that in a long time.
Oh, really? Oh, man.
I didn't become a Christian until my late 20s.
Okay.
I grew up in the church, but I didn't really take it seriously. You know, it was my parents' faith, it was my grandparents' faith, it wasn't my faith. You know, you hear that a lot.
Yeah.
There were aspects of it I liked, but I didn't, like I said, I certainly wasn't on fire for anything. And then, you move out of the house and you go off to college and you start doing that stuff, and it just kind of, that falls by the wayside. It was not something that I took. Certainly was not a Christian by any means. I would not call myself that. And then, kind of got into my late 20s, and life starts happening, personal things start happening. You kind of have that, I call it kind of a quarter life crisis, and so I really had one of those conversion moments, one of those born again moments where you fall on your knees and you're like, wow,
Feel it.
okay,
Yeah.
you feel it, your eyes open and you're like, okay, I guess
It's time to come back.
I'm a Christian now.
Mm-hmm.
This is weird, and you just kind of start going with it. And so but it was very powerful and very real to me, absolutely. And I just grabbed my Bible that I had, had since childhood, Well, really, no, I got this Bible when I graduated high school. So, but it was, a decoration on a shelf,
Yeah.
and I just grabbed it,
Dusted it
and
off.
dusted it off and just, started, Gen 1-1 and just started reading. And this is like one of those study Bibles,
Yeah.
So it's got like, for every chapter, there's at least that much more notes.
Yeah.
And I just started reading, and it took me 4 years to finish it.
Oh, wow.
My goal was like a chapter a day, and I would do that sometimes. Sometimes, a few days would go by or a week would go by, and I wouldn't. But, every morning, and I was single, I wasn't married, so every morning, cup of coffee, prayer time, Bible.
Nice.
Took me 4 years to get through it.
Cover to cover?
Cover to cover, yeah.
But that's
And-
great, though, because it was a few weeks ago, I saw a study, it was Faith Life. I think it was done in 2019, where of professing Christians in America, it was only 10% of Christians have read the entirety of the Bible.
Yeah.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
I still read, I didn't read this morning, and I can always tell a difference when I don't, and I just didn't this morning.
Yeah.
So at some point today, I'm going to have to, dedicate some time to it. Yes. And I haven't gone through the Bible again since then, just that one time.
Yeah.
Last year, end of last year, I picked up, I think in Mark.
Okay. Yeah.
And started reading through, and so now I just started Galatians.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite story since you've read through it? Is
That's a
something
side
stick out to you?
topic, but
Oh man,
there's so much.
I mean,
Verse,
there's-
story, book.
there's so much. I love some of the gospel stories. I love Jesus at the well. with a woman.
Yeah.
Just the fact that he chose her,
Mm-hmm.
it just tells you so much about him.
Yeah.
And I just love that story. If the context, if you just read that story, you don't get it. But if you start diving into the context and the political environment of the times and everything, and he had no business talking to her, and it's just like, and that's the first one that he reveals himself to. It's like, oh my God, it's
a woman.
I love
a Samaritan woman.
Yeah.
He does what no one else would have really done.
I love the story of, I don't know why, I really like the story of the guy in the, that has We Are Legion, the guy in the catacombs and the tombs, and he puts the demon in the pigs, and the pigs run off the cliff. I love that story a lot. I don't know why. That story's just cool. And then, there's tons of Old Testament stories that are awesome too. Being a father and thinking about, Abraham being told to sacrifice Isaac, and he's going through with it. He's doing it. And I'm like, dude, I would have failed at that.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way. There's no way. But he did it, and he just had learned that type of faith over, 110 years probably at that point. But
that's right.
I guess that's why he's the father of the faith.
Probably because he had a little bit more inside motivation than I've learned at this point.
I think that was one of the first stories for me personally in high school where I realized the layers of the Bible, because there's so much going on there that resembles with Jesus, a father giving up his son, going up to Mount Moriah, which is the area where Jesus would have been crucified, and it's just crazy. All the parallels.
That story can turn people off or turn them on.
It
really can.
If
you're in the secular world and you just come into the Bible now, it's the first thing you read without knowing anything else about the Bible. It can seem like, whoa, what are we doing here?
That's
but
also
the
true.
moment you read about Jesus and you start seeing that comparison there, and God's compassion, you get to know Him. It's deeper than that.
I think and gosh, you're talking about the Bible. I mean, there's so many layers, right?
Yeah.
And so many things.
It's endless layers.
And you can read it. I mean, you can literally read it 1,000 times, and it'll be different every time. But, we were having a discussion here on campus. We had a staff meeting, and we always kind of start with a devotional. And it was like, Eric, you're leading the devotional this time. And I'm like, oh, what am I talking about? And so I just started talking about, fear. And I think, the last couple of years, I think a lot of us have been living with a spirit of fear, and we're about to hit the holidays and start a new year and hopefully be optimistic and hopeful, but I think the last couple of years we haven't been, and I was unaware of this, that the Bible uses some variation of the statement, do not be afraid or do not fear 365 times, which is one a day
by sheer quantity,
probably not a coincidence.
I
don't know if it is. I have no idea what the Jewish calendar was like. Don't get me started.
But for real.
And I would like to go back and study, compare. And Jesus, God uses terms like I command you, not be afraid. Do not be afraid, in very harsh terms, as if fear or giving into fear or fear separating you from trust and faith. Is a sin. Right. I don't think we think about it that way. No. But his language certainly indicates it is. And I would like to go back and see how many times did you talk about other specific sins? Is fear the number one thing he talks about? It may be at 365. It may be.
I know it's the number one outright command by sheer quantity.
Yeah.
By sheer quantity, do not fear is number one.
But there's lots of talk. There's lots of references to sexual sin and stuff like that. But by sheer quantity, fear may be number one. And so
I believe it is.
You ask, okay, well, why is that? Well, what does fear do? Well, fear separates you from trusting God.
It's trust, faith. The word pistis has to do with, what's it called? Like loyalty.
Yeah.
You're kind of, we're not loyal when we don't believe.
Yeah.
And when you transfer that fear of the world and you transfer it, and now we're fearing God, that changes our whole life. And now we're living a life of service and of service to Him. And it changes everything. Yeah. Now we can go out, we can serve other people. We are coming up on the holiday season, Christmas.
It's here.
And this is a time of giving, receiving, but hopefully a time of great giving. Jesus says it's blessed to give than to receive. Have you seen giving or service, how have you seen it change people's lives?
man, I mean, it's we see it a lot out here, and it's hard to, I'll get people call me, and it'll be a small gift, I mean, relatively speaking, it may be $50. It may be a couple $100 that some company was able to, put together, and they are so happy to call me and tell me about it, and it's just like the joy they get out of that gift, is I mean, it's obvious how much more joy they're getting out of that gift than if I gave them $50.
Right, because you guys greatly depend on giving.
Of course we do. Yeah, it's over half our budget is donations out here.
Really?
Whether that's monetary or something tangible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we see it all the time. And we have people like, we just had our fall festival a couple weeks ago. And we have a silent auction that we do every year with that. We have businesses who donate us stuff. But we've had the same married couple who has organized that auction for us for like 25 years now. And that's just like their thing, and they're so happy to do it and they're so pleased to do it. They do a ton of work, but I mean, they don't think twice about it because of the joy they get out of it. So yeah, it happens all the time, and it's fun to be on this side of things and see it. Before I came to the home, I was at UMC Health System, in charge of their marketing and advertising for about 10 years. And I was in charge of sponsorships and so we would give those type of things. But it's fun to be on this side and, deal with that type of thing every day because people are just so joyous to do it.
That's so cool.
So it sounds like you have a lot of experience working with a lot of people and some very tough situations. So you've seen a lot of life. This is a really broad question, but what's something you suppose that you have learned from others in these experiences, whether it was something positive or negative or something perhaps we all share in common? What are some things you've learned?
I think, well, we do see a lot of tough stuff. And a lot of the kids we get are in real tough situations. But kids are very resilient, and they a little bit of love and a little bit of trust goes a long way for a kid.
Trust.
And so going back, we just used that word a little while ago.
Yeah. Well, part of my interruption, but you're talking about trust with the kids there. That's why I like what you said as a father. George is, I'm not. But that mirror, because Romans 8 says we don't have a spirit of fear, but a spirit of adoption. We can cry, Abba, Father. And so you're relaying that to the child's perspective, how valuable that would be.
Yeah.
The do not fear.
It is, yeah. And I think, in my time in the hospital system, any nurse will tell you there's a lot worse things in this world than dying. And so, we talk about things in a spiritual realm. I mean, James said, Peter said, y'all correct me, that, we're just missed, we're here for a very short time.
James.
James, thank you. I was 50% there. We're so temporary, everything's so temporary, and before we went on the air and I was complaining about our Christmas tree at home. I mean, what does it matter? None of it really doesn't matter.
Right.
It's what you do with your time here, because, you'll be 10,000 years bright shining as the sun. I mean, you're not going to care what happened during that COVID time. I mean, it's so fragmented, and that's not the right word. It's so finite compared to what we're going to experience as Christians through all eternity. I don't even remember what the question was, but I just think that I see people in this line of work who understand that, and realize that we're here for a much higher purpose than just, what are we going to get for Christmas? Kind of stuff.
There's more blessed to give. Yeah.
And then, just personally, I mean, we, of course, lost my daughter to cancer a year ago.
I'm so sorry.
Well, thank you. And, that has had a tremendous impact on the way my wife and I view life. Yeah. And, we talk all the time, it won't be that long till we're together. I'm 40, I'm 42. What do I have? 30 years, 40 more years if I'm lucky. And then I, have the promise of being reunited with my daughter for all eternity. So, I had her for 5 years, won't tangibly see her, although I see her in small ways all the time, but I won't for, that brief time and then eternity. So it's, it just changes the way you look at things.
I like the way you do look at that. It's a promise. Eternity with God and your daughter. I'm very sorry about that.
Well, thank you.
How can, with that experience, how can we be there, as you were on the receiving side, how can we be there for those who have had such a tragedy? I know that can never, ever, ever be replaced, but how can Christians rally around someone in such a state?
I think, I can talk personally on that, and I can talk about our kids, obviously, because they're going through a lot of trauma too.
Yeah.
I think just providing them with stability. I think, when you go through tragedy or trauma, what you've really gone through is a significant change, right? Whether that is as adults or as children. And so what you're looking for is just something predictable, something stable that we can, we all want that, whether, some people, various personalities, they can't function as well in those environments. They got to have something new, but everybody wants something stable they can go back to.
Yeah.
And we can have it, it's one thing that's great about Christianity in general is just the stable trust of God, the promises of God, I should say, you can always come back to. I think I have been blown away, just my personal story, of how many people text me praying for you today. Just on my heart, just praying for you today. I don't do that for people. And so it's never occurred to me, I can hear something about somebody, then I can stop and I can say a prayer in my mind. Right. But to actually reach out and follow up with them and just let them know, hey, I just want to let you know I'm praying for you and I'm thinking about you and I love you.
Yeah.
That's tremendous. Those little things are tremendous. And so I've had to start keeping a little notebook and writing things down so that I can actually remember to pray for it later or text them later or whatever.
Smart.
I've learned that from others because I was just blown away by the amount of people who do that. And so, it's just another, it's in my walk, and that never occurred to me. You know?
That's the beauty of growth. God's people and his kingdom is that we're here for one another and we're united in Christ. And when someone goes through some hard times or some tragedy, we're able to, I like what you said, help create some stability there as well. That is probably every father's worst nightmare. I can only imagine the amount of pain that was. Did that affect your faith any?
It grew it.
Oh, it did.
Really?
Like I said, I've been a Christian probably 15 years. That I would call myself that.
Yeah.
But that ebbs and flows, right? I mean, you have seasons where you're real close to God and you have seasons where you're not. And it's not like you're no longer a Christian, but you're just not on fire the way you are in the beginning, right? And I think, for a few years before my daughter's diagnosis, I just didn't, that was probably a time there where I wasn't reading consistently. I wasn't praying consistently. Again, just kind of going through the motions. I was more occupied with, my work or, my career or whatever. And it certainly helped us get through that time, pretty much from the time she was diagnosed, my wife and I started praying together. First time we'd ever done that. We never prayed together as a couple. And so we started doing that and both of us started just diving deeper and relying more on God to get through that. And ultimately, it didn't work out the way we wanted, but that's okay too, for reasons I've already said, you're like, okay, either she's going to be healed or she's going to be safe for all eternity. And so as a father, you win it either way, right?
Right.
And so you just rely on that and keep walking through it. And so I think our faith has grown much more. My wife and I have many more conversations, and I think our faith has just delved so much deeper during that process.
And that's probably strengthened your family as well. I mean, what do you think in your experience creates a healthy spiritual family?
You know, I don't know that it is incumbent upon one individual in the family. And I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that's incumbent upon the husband or the father. I mean, obviously that's traditionally what we think of.
It's a team.
But I think it's very much a team. I mean, you and your wife are one. You're one flesh, right? You're one body. So you do it together.
Yeah.
My wife has, I think, done a fantastic job. She's been reading lots of books and of just learning about the power of prayer and how to properly pray, or your mindset while you're praying.
Right, yeah.
Stuff that I never even thought about, you know. And so, you know, I'll go to her all the time and be like, hey, I'm worried about this, or this is a problem. She's like, no, that's Satan. He's telling you this. Get that out of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Tell God this, and go with it. And so it helps me tremendously. So, you know, I think, you know, we see that with our kids, right? I mean, if mom and dad are Christians and they have their family involved in a church family somewhere, and those kids are growing up with that background, those kids usually don't wind up here, right? And so, you know, most of our kids, and one of our fundamental things that we do, I mean, we've got to clothe and we've got to feed and we've got to house, but we also have to introduce those kids to the love and compassion of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so to most of our kids, that's brand new information. I mean, yeah, they've probably heard, but they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I think that's one of the keys. And I you know, we can have a much larger conversation about, you know, society, quote unquote, in general. But,
sure.
You know, you look at church attendance and, you know, church families and, you know, the degrading of those things, the erosion of those things. And I think you're seeing what the results of that are.
That's really good. Well, it seems like there's deeper layers, as we're learning from you, Eric, to everyone.
I mean, everybody's got a story, right?
Yeah.
All you got to do is ask.
Everyone's an onion. But as we do that, we were just asking you before, you're involved in the children's home, you're working for them, you're involved in these kids' lives, you're helping them find, you know, their needs. People want to help, and I think people really want to do a lot of good for others, but they just don't know where.
Yeah.
They don't know where to start.
Yeah.
In your experience, what have you found helpful when it comes to finding people's needs and what they need to help serve them?
I mean, it's really as simple as just asking.
Is it really that simple?
Some people want to write a check and be done, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Some people don't want to do that. They want to come out and volunteer or mentor or something, and that's awesome. Some people want to run the auction at the fall festival. I mean, there's tons of ways they can help. First and foremost, what I always tell people, the first thing you can do for us is pray. That is our first and best line of defense in just about everything.
Yeah, that's not the last one. I like that. It's the first one.
It's the first one. And so first thing you do is pray for us. And, you know, God will ultimately take care of these kids and take care of us. So, and then, you know, give me a call and let's talk about it. Let's figure out what works for you guys, you know, or your listeners or whoever. I mean, like, you know, specifically for you guys, you know, y'all called up and y'all want to be involved in the home, and we started talking, and y'all need space to do your podcast.
Yeah.
We got space out here. It's one thing we have on 400 acres. We have some room.
It's a blessing.
And so, and then what y'all are doing here is leading to so much more stuff down the road. So that's the fit, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I hit the table. I did
That's
it.
all right.
Oh,
You guys warned me about that. And I did it.
Episode's over. We're done.
Yeah, exactly right. So I think just give me a call. My number, 806-224-6091.
Perfect.
806-224-6091 is my phone number. Call me, text me, and we can start having those conversations and figure out what it is. You know, it's not always monetary. Obviously, we need monetary. We got to pay the bills, but these kids need much more than money, and so there's always ways to help out with that.
Mm-hmm. One of the things we're talking about off camera that I think we'll just talk about right now is you're talking about specific needs come up a lot for the children here.
Yeah.
So for all of you listening who are locally here in Lubbock, and especially for Christians who are at Milwaukee Ave, we're going to throw together a clothing drive. That's what we're going to be doing. So that's one way to be involved. But you were saying let's not just be we're happy that people are involved in the holiday season, but you talk more about year-round help. What's that?
Yeah,
story?
so we get the vast majority of our donations, monetary donations at least, in December, as you can imagine. It's half of what we get. And so, we're feeling real good about ourselves in January and February, and then things start getting real tight June and July. And so, that's oftentimes when we need somebody to call and say, what do y'all need that time of year? So, I mean, really it's a year-round thing, but
year-round.
What we were able to raise or harvest, to use farmer terms, is this month. It will last us really throughout the year. But so I did find out yesterday, so, hot off the press, that we're in dire need of clothing for children.
Right on.
Toddler through, young adult. And I'm talking about basics, underwear, socks, jeans, T-shirts, hoodies, jackets, that kind of stuff. And one of the reasons there's been, the state of Texas has made a lot of changes to the foster care system in the last year to 18 months. And a change that just came down in September is a new law that CPS, Child Protective Services, should only take children out of homes if their lives are in immediate danger. And we can argue both sides of that forever on if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Right.
But what that means is that, number one, there are fewer kids now in the system, but also the ones that we are getting are coming with absolutely nothing, clothes on their back, pretty much. We used to, sometimes you'd get kids and they would have, maybe a suitcase of a few things and, maybe a few toys or whatever. But what we're getting now, they don't have anything. And so we're providing them with much more at the outset, and so our clothing commissary gets raided pretty fast.
Does that leave you with kids that may have a little more, I'm trying to say this, more trauma or maybe a little more rough?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, you're looking at kids that are, maybe black and blue when they get here from, physical abuse. Maybe they're highly sexualized in some way. There's been some sexual trauma there as well. Now we tend to, so that's all graded out, right? You've got, levels, level A, B, and C of trauma. And so we tend to care for just, basic levels of trauma here, not moderate or specialized. We can, but not in as high of numbers as we can. So of the kids we have, we only have a couple that are in the moderate category.
Right.
So if they're in really bad shape, if they've gone through some horrible things, then they probably won't wind up here. They may wind up somewhere else. But so all that to say, I was just told yesterday, we're running out of clothes real fast because we are taking fewer kids right now. We're receiving fewer kids, I should say. We're open to take whatever, but we're receiving fewer. But the ones that we are getting, we're using more of our resources on.
And like we just said, that's gonna be your faith in action. To start going.
And
so number one, pray. That's not a backup. Number one, pray.
Not at all.
Two, like you said, you got his phone number if you want to be connected for whatever needs that we feel like we can help or meet. And then the immediate one right now, if you're listening at the December of 2021 here in Lubbock, is to meet that need with some clothing. That's true and undefiled religion.
And don't, if you're listening and you're not in this local area and you're just in another state or out of reach, don't be afraid to get involved in your own community as well and reach out, like you said. If you really want to serve, ask. And
I, not to go on a tangent or a rant here, but I think as Christians, we oftentimes think of missions or missionary things as things happening overseas, right?
That's so true.
Or in other countries.
Yeah, so true. Yeah.
When our backyards are littered, where our eyes are full of planks, right? And so there's mission work that you can do here without a passport. And most time it's right in your hometown, and that's where it probably should be done, right? Because your hometown,
right?
You probably know what the needs are. You just don't want to address them, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I would look for things. I would look for things close to home.
Yep.
You know, maybe that's a COVID thing. Maybe it's hard to travel, so look for mission work close to home, right?
That's great advice.
That is good. That's really good.
Eric, this was really valuable.
Man, I enjoyed it. Thank y'all very much.
Yeah.
One thing I will say,
yes,
and y'all have done some of this already, I think, but I know other congregations listen to this podcast, not just yours. But if you're in the local area, we would love to host some congregations out here sometime, whether that's a Wednesday night or a Sunday night or whatever y'all want to do. As churches start adding those things back, you know.
Because you do singing here or something like that?
Yeah, because I think one of the things that we discovered, you know, COVID taught us a lot out here when everything shut down. We didn't offer a lot on campus. You know, in the 50s when we opened, in the 50s and 60s, we did because it was harder to get into town, right? I mean, now it's so simple to run to Lubbock. You know, we're in the city limits, you know, out here at this point. And it's so easy just to run to town. And so there's a lot of stuff that we weren't offering out here. And one of the things that kind of slapped us in the face is we don't really have a spiritual care program out here, right? I mean, we talk about it. We talk about the need for that. Every cottage has a church they attend.
Sure.
But if those churches aren't meeting, who does that on campus here for the kids? And so I would like to, at least once a month, have a Sunday night service out here from somebody that we can all attend.
Let's talk about that.
Or a Wednesday night service or something. And I'll be honest, I've mentioned that to a dozen congregations.
No one's taking it up.
And no one's taken me up on that yet.
Well, I think...
I don't know why, but they just haven't. I think they're just slow to get back. I think a lot of congregations stopped doing that during COVID, and they're just slow, or their numbers are still kind of weak, and they're just like, I don't want to bring 5 people. But yeah, no one's taking me up on that, but I would love to do that out here at least once a month so our kids can attend it, right?
Yeah.
I think we could definitely work something out.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think we can.
Be good.
Eric, thank you so much for your story. You've increased my faith here, and I hope for all of you guys back home, get involved, help those in need, serve them, love God. That's the basics, but it's
crucial.
It's really what we're here for, right?
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Yep. Greatest of these is love. Thank you again, Eric.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
That's a wrap. Go so.